Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Barry Erickson, and I'm Community Engagement Coordinator here at Wheaton Public Library. Tonight, we are delighted to bring you another art demonstration provided in partnership with the DuPage Art League. Founded over 60 years ago, the DuPage Art League is dedicated to promoting and encouraging the visual arts through classes, workshops, gallery exhibits, and public programs such as this one. We are grateful to the DuPage Art League for arranging tonight's demonstration by artist Laura Lein-Svencner. Laura has been working and teaching in the art medium of collage for 32 years. As a self-taught artist, raising a family and building a career in the arts has been challenging and fulfilling. The visible contrasts in art are as real as the contrasts in life, a combined unity of passion and work. Viewing her work today, you will see this connection. So please join me in welcoming Laura.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me here today, DuPage Art League and Wheaton Library, and Dana and Barry and Adele. All thank you very much for coming here, and all of you coming to see this in person, and the people on Zoom. I just wanted to share with you that the passion of putting and using in pieces, building things up and that, and working with paper started at a very young age. I just found out in the last 3 years that my grandfather would come and visit, and he would bring me a new box of crayons when I was little. So the smell of a good coloring book and crayons, it smells good, like, the lawn cut, the first lawn cut. Oh, wow, that smells really good. So I've been coloring, I've been doing things, piecing things together. In high school, I hung out in the art department quite often, and printing, ceramics, but I really didn't get into collage till afterwards, until after I had my children. And then my twins, I have 4 children, and the last ones were twins. Sounds funny, but at 4, they started to be able to entertain themselves. And so I got back into my art, and a lot of shoe boxes in the house. So I separated my papers in shoe boxes, and then I couldn't see them. So what was in the boxes, and I was using a card table and working on the new section of the house while they were roller skating around on the plywood, and you just do, and it felt really good. And then I just kept on doing it as they went through school. I got involved in their school art programs. So I just kind of educated myself. And as an art volunteer, we got to go to the Art Institute. And so I was learning the whole time, going into this. But I really liked working with found papers, old cards, and maps and all that, which we'll get into that as we go through this slideshow here. And it's, I don't know, I just love working with the papers and doing things to the different things. And I'll show some of that today in the demonstration. So I think what I'll do is we'll start the slideshow, if that's okay. Okay. All righty. I put this on in my slide presentation because who am I inspired by? Other artists, and Georgia O'Keeffe was one, and I think it mainly had to do a lot with her color and her shapes. And then I got an opportunity through being an art awareness mom to go and see a play of 2 people, being Alfred Stiegels and Georgia O'Keeffe, and they showed us a movie in between of them, and they read the letters that they wrote to each of them. It was just so beautiful to see that. Robin Rauschenberg, I really like his work a lot. Jasper John, Hans Hofmann, Kurt Switters, Fred Ottness, and Joseph Cornell. And the last one, the living artist, is Jonathan Talbot. And I was working with my collage papers. I was coding them, because what I learned from reading a lot of books and that is that papers have acids, and they can seep into other things, and they start to decompose. So by putting a layer of medium on the paper, front and back, then that preserves whatever's there and it won't seep into the other, so I had to think about the papers, preparing the papers before I even started. And then I took a workshop with Jonathan Talbot, and he's out in New York, and we've been corresponding here and there, back and forth, but he taught the technique of using a gloss medium and an iron. And everybody had to coat papers. I'm like, I was already going and using all the papers and coating them just because I knew that's the way to preserve them. Some papers have a lot of acid in them, and so I wanted to use them. They were old, so I needed a way to preserve them. But when I met Jonathan, like I said, I changed to gloss instead of matte medium, and then I could use an iron and fuse it to the surface. So if anybody ever heard of dry mounting, they used to, a long time ago, my younger years, they used to, do posters, and they would dry mount them, so the poster would be on a sturdy surface. So it's a heat process that happens with that. So there's a lot of prep time, but then to put the collage together, it goes together quite easily, and you don't have to use the wet glue and get everything in position. You get it into position, and then you go on from there. So next slide. Okay, this is a cute little thing here, and my grandfather, I just found out 7 years ago when my aunt passed away that the farm that was on Dunham Road in Downers Grove was the last operating farm that was in Downers Grove. And I didn't even know that till afterwards, and that was something that my aunt had shared. But I used to sit up in Wisconsin when they moved up there. I would sit on the swing with my grandfather. He's got the pipe. Oh, what a wonderful smell that was. But he always taught to observe. Okay, and I got my box of crayons and I'm coloring and drawing things. And he also said, break things down into shapes and sizes. Okay, simple shapes. All right. And then he says, then build it back up and see the connection. So taking everything and, drawing, if you first, it's just simple shapes. If you can break it down, then you can start reconnecting them. And then, this advice again came from my grandfather. He came over here from Poland. He was a tobacco picker. He was a locomotive mechanic. He was a shoemaker, and at last was a farmer, and he was a father of 10 children. So we got a lot of Leins on that side of the family there. So I just wanted to share this because, it's where I started, with some of these things. And you never know, now I can make the connection, but it was a nice time to spend with my grandfather, and it was a lesson well learned, So next slide. Okay, these are some of the supplies that I use. Magazines, as you can see, a pile of magazines by Golden. I like to use their brand. It works a lot better than Liquitex, and it's gloss medium. I use the Golden acrylics, and I also use craft paints too, that's there. I like to use a lot of different tools to alternate the papers, some handmade, some things I find, stencils, things to stamp. I like to work with the watercolor paper as the first surface to work with, the substrate. Then I can move it to and frame it, or I can move it to a canvas, or I can move it to a wood panel like this one right behind me here. I use the iron because this gloss that's on there, it dries, and when it's heated, it melts and fuses together. So I just show a couple of different irons, your regular house iron and that. And over time, the one iron on the end there that's got the black handle and it's long, you can find those like on eBay, but it's like, as I've been doing this for quite a few years, things start to, you can't find the supplies you had before. So, and then I had people that were taking my online classes, and they needed to learn about, using the iron, and that's in a different country, so it was hard to hook up the little black one. So I said, just use your regular iron, but it is a little cumbersome. So it's nice to have a smaller one. Never dull. This is something that it alters magazines, especially National Geographics. It takes all the inks and it you can rub it off and you can create some really cool papers. I won't show it here because it's very smelly. It's a solvent that's in there, and they use this to clean like boats and chrome and stuff like that. And then I like to use drawing materials. Now these are Stabilos that are there. I can't use a lot of because the coat is shiny. So I used to you need a drawing medium that will release on a shiny surface. And then I have to spray it with a fixative or otherwise it'll wipe off. So I like to use, I mean, that's why I really gravitate towards this medium because I can use a lot of different things, but it's knowing what layer to put them in. Next slide. Okay, and so this is just a stack of papers. And collage means to glue or paste. Okay, and the cousin to collage is assemblage. That's when you start using three-dimensional things. So this here has got some book thread that's in it behind me here. So this would be considered a little bit of assemblage because it's a three-dimensional and it's got carpet tacks on it. So it's cousin of it. I just call it really collage. So some of the materials that I use, maps, engineer plans, geological plans. I had somebody that her husband did that, and I mean, a box like this tall. So every time I do a workshop, I says, I can't use it all. I got to bring some. But it's really nice because he traveled around and that was his job, but then he saved them all and now it's, he has nothing to do with them. But the thing is when you use the engineer plans or something like that, they're copyrighted. So I like to do something different to the surface so that you can't actually tell what it was, except for lines and maybe some words here and there. Sheet music, that's hard to find these days. Everybody's got a different, usually garage sales or resales, but I try to find them and people know that I do this so they'll actually, help share. Drawing paper, instead of using construction paper, which is not light fast. That means it fades. We know that, like newspapers, it fades. So whatever kind of paper that I want, with the colors, I use the drawing paper and then I put the acrylic on the surface and then I get the color that I want, that way. Magazines, National Geographics, craft paper, paper grocery bags. Oh, they're fun. And I'll show you that when we get over to the demonstration paper table. The deli papers, those are sheets. They're not wax paper, but they go, like if you want to buy a donut or something, you grab one, put that on your hand and you can grab that. That's a fun paper to play with too. Tissue paper, newspaper, as long as there's a couple of layers of acrylic in some way or form on there and then you coat it, it should be okay. And image transfers, that's taking an image. In this piece behind me here, this has got a little tree there and there's a nest. And these are photographs that I've taken and I used my computer and I shrunk those down and these become image transfers and I bring those into the piece here. This is my husband's aunt's property. She had a huge, big oak tree that was there. So just because of the blue, I just brought that image that's in there. So that actually an image transfer, if you ever heard about that, an image transfer is a skin of acrylic medium and the image. And you add many coats on the surface of it and you turn it over, fuse it down, and you peel the paper back off. So you can, I did a gift for my stepmom and my dad is what their grandparents, and them as little kids together. So I had, instead of using the real photograph, I did image transfers. Because sometimes those photographs, that's precious, So I just took a copy of it and I used it that way. So next slide. Okay, and here is on the one side, the reds and the maroons, that's tissue paper. And then on this side here, which I'll demonstrate today a little bit, is National Geographic magazines. And I have templates that have different design and patterns on there. So I've altered the National Geographics because it's somebody else's work, photographed. And so you have to alter that to some extent where you can't even tell what was underneath there. But it's a great, you can work with them. They're pretty durable. And so then I've added some color on those after I sanded it. The acrylic soaks into the areas where I sand. The kids have a good time with it. I don't know if you ever remember taking your crayons and peeling the paper off and doing a rubbing when we were little. So it's almost like that. Yeah, but use the magazines. Next slide. Okay, and now this is really important and it's really hard to go back to the basics, but this is where I go from because the work that I do, I don't have a reference. I don't have a photograph that I'm working for, so I use the design, the basic things, line, shape, form, color, value, texture, and space, and then how you use that one side of the elements you use them and you pull the design in there, make a pattern out of those shapes. What is the size? Bring balance. And so understanding all of this is where I taught myself. And I had a couple of other collage artist books, and I just went through the book and did what they did so I could understand this. And it's really important to understand this in any art form, is that then I find when I'm questioning my art as I'm creating it, as of, something might be off, I can go back to these elements and say, oh, well, how was my line? Shapes? Do I have too many shapes? Do I need a different size shape or whatever it is? And so it helps me to have a good base so that I can go back into that. Next slide. Okay, and now this is composition, and this is just some, different ways to lay things out, and there's different compositions, but I usually always start with a horizontal line or a vertical. And then you can take from that and you can go and you can, grow into the other compositions that are there. But it's a place to start, because a lot of times like I said, I don't have a reference. So it's a place that I can start. Use a big piece of paper. Instead of putting the whole piece of paper as one size, I break it up and add other papers in there. But I still have that strong horizontal line that's there. And I also have a vertical line in this big piece that's right there that's going down. So you can see that in there. Next slide. Okay, a series, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. This is a series. This piece I just finished behind me with the spirit horse that's there. And a series is a way that an artist can study a subject matter. They can use a series as what you use in there again and again and again, and how they're related when they're shown together. So a subject matter in this, as I'm going to show tonight, is just using this horse, this spirit horse that I call in here. And I've done a few of them on the other table that's over there. But with that, you can explore as an artist doing another one again, and then again. And then all of a sudden you start getting bored. And then you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Or you want to study it more. And what you can do is change it a little bit. And some of the pieces that I have over there, they're the three-legged ponies, I call them. Now, in this one here, it finally has 4 legs, and now it's got a mane on it, So I'm playing around. I revisited this series that I started. But a lot of my work happens because I have leftover paper. I make a piece and I have leftover paper. And what do you do with that leftover paper? Well, let's make a smaller one, or let's make a different size, So that and then they say it's a virtual storytelling that happens with this. Next slide. And here you go. I'm just going to ask you to look at these. What is relatable? What is relatable? Yeah, colors are relatable. Yeah, there might be some patterns, the different papers that I have in here that I repeated. And so I have one little piece left. These little ones on the side, I think they're only maybe 4 inches by 4 inches, so they're small. Fortunate, I do a lot of series because it keeps me going and focused on something. But a lot of time what happened, and I shouldn't say this, but it is people like, I love to see it in a series, but I can't afford all of them. So I don't want to buy one, But luckily this series here did go, and it went all together. They bought them all together. So that was nice. Okay, next slide. Okay, and I do have this one here tonight, so if you want anybody that's here, they can see it in person. But the large one in the middle, I did that. That's tissue paper on the bottom. I had little letters, that might have stuck on a poster or something like that. I sandwiched them in between tissue paper. And, so all these papers I create. So I touched this from the very beginning to the very end, okay? And so with that, then afterwards, I had more paper left, so then I made a long, tall vertical. I like to work in verticals too, and squares. And then I have another one on the other side and put some image transfers in there. But you can see they relate together because of the papers and the color and the words or the letters that are in there. So that starts creating that series that's there. And this is a limited series of 3. Because I don't have any more paper that goes with that. So
story behind
the story, a visual story is working with the font, the letters in there, and some are organized, some are not in there, and it's just like everywhere you go, a lot of times I have another series you'll see, it's like everything's got numbers and letters, and it's just like, I always, when I started making this, is that what we're going to come down to? Which is, that's what we've come down to, not human beings, So, and it was a lot of time it's just working with these colors and bringing them together, in there. So next slide. Okay, and so this is design and series and collage. Now these were 6 by 12. I don't have them anymore. I started this series a long time ago, but you can see it's the same subject, the horse that's in there, the three-legged pony, but I played with the background and played with the color. So I start studying the colors, working with them too. Patterns. Stencils in there, use some of those. And then the paper that the horse is other papers that I've created, and then working. Usually I pick the horse out first, and then I start working with the background, whatever paper. Next slide. And here are up close so that you could see. The textures on the paper are made with gesso on craft paper. After it dries, then I bring in acrylics and I alter the color of that. So I use like a tile spreader that has textures on there. You can use a comb. So I have a lot of fun. It's hard to tell my husband I'm working, when I'm making all the papers. But I do have to, when I'm making all the papers, then I do, play around with a lot of those. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then here I'm working with these blues, the darker kind of an evening kind of thing with them. Jelly plate? No, no. I know a lot of people do, and they're fun. I have them, but I don't necessarily use them a lot. Yeah. Next slide. Okay, and this is just playing with shapes and composition. So I just put these as just a couple of little ones. There's 3 of them together that I made in this, and I only used the paper that I had and just kind of finished them up. But as you can see, I was playing with the triangle, the angle, bringing the angle in there. When this is what I taught to tell the kids, if you're standing up straight up and down, you're pretty sturdy, all right? If you're laying down on the bed, you're pretty flat. But as soon as you take a step, you see your body's in an angle. It can show movement, and learning how to use that in design, movement in there without maybe drawing the person taking this step. You create movement with angle, okay? And how is that angle going to be used? And so that's a whole, is the angle leading you right out? These are just segments of the piece that's there, but it is a harder thing to work with, is working with angles in design. Next slide. Okay, and this is the series that you saw pretty much on what was advertised about me coming in today. And I had all these papers made, and then I just kept making these 8 by 8s, and then I put them on wood panels. So I made one, and then I just kind of hid it away. And then I started with the papers that I made, and some of them have the same papers throughout. The black and white that's in there, I like that contrast. And that's what I called this series, is a living contrast. Because every day, we wake up and there's many contrasts that happen just in life. It's the morning, it's the night, in a day. So no special thing. It was just playing with design and seeing what I could do with that. Next slide. And then I have a house thing. I like houses. I like the square and I like the angle that's there. I heard that a square is when you work with, well, not work with a square, but the square symbolizes stability. And then the triangle could be dreams and ideas. So I thought, oh, perfect together, the house. So here is a piece that, I'm playing with the shape, and then this is leaves in the house. That's what this is called. And that leaves are actually from our cottonwood tree that I made image transfers, because it's hard to use the leaf in art because it's already in the state of decomposing when it falls off the tree. So I made photographs of it, and then I brought those in there. So this is a beginning, a little bit, the next couple slides will be, of some more houses that I did. Next slide. Okay, and this big one here in the middle, that actually started, I'm not sure if I got my sketchbook here, my collage sketchbook. It started in a sketch where I just used magazines in a sketchbook and a glue stick, and I made the design, and then I made it bigger. So it's House Under the Big Moon is called there. And then I play with that many times. I bring that series back in, as you can see, in different ways. And simple shapes, square and a triangle. Next slide. Okay, and this is the help of the husband here. These are, each one of these, I did 3 of them, and I call them totems, okay? And they each have a 12 by 48, a 12 by 12, a 12 by 6, and then I think it's a 12 by 16. But how I organize those, and so I created each individual wood panel, but I wanted to put them together, and then there's a space in between there so that the wall could be part of it, wherever it was hanging. So I needed a little extra help to nail it and get it steady and stuff like that. So he jumps in and gives me a hand. Next slide. Okay, and here they are, so you can see the size. They're 7 foot tall. Yeah. Yeah, the first one is Painted Mare, and then the next one is Seeking Direction, and then the White-Tail Dance. And then the one with the deer in it, I actually took a picture out in the woods of a deer, and then I was able to bring it to the computer, and then I had to blow it up, and I made an image transfer of that, from there. So these were in the gallery Tallgrass down south of here. So there was and that's another piece of mine too that's next to it. So next slide. Okay, and now I'm still into the horse thing again here, and a different kind of style instead of the one here with the rounded edges. I actually have to share with you, I took horseback riding lessons for a year. I am dyslexic, and I have when it's left and it's right, and you pull the reins, that poor horse. But I loved it. I loved to go. So, after a year, I says, okay, it's time to go out. I'm not going to get a horse, but it was a fun time to be around them. And so the leaf image transfers is from Shaggy Bark Hickory. And then I created the horse, and then I shrunk it down the size. You can see the hickory little images of the leaves. And so I had to create this horse before I moved it to the next one. Next slide. And then this became a series. They're Painted Ponies, they're called. And this one is Cottonwood, the first one, and Shaggy Bark Hickory and Oak. And so while I was there were horses that were painted ponies, that were there. So, and then the handprints, those are in there. And each one of them has a Native American prayer in there about the earth. So there's a piece there. So next slide. Okay, and then this became my Faceless People series. And so I loved it when I went to IKEA and I found those wooden mannequins that were there. And I bought quite a few of them. And I propped them up out next to the tree, out on the berm, across the street by the cattail basin. I took a lot of pictures. And as these are 8.5 by 11, the legs there and then the top, what I had to do is I wanted it big for some of these pieces. So I had to blow it up big enough, and the same size, and so I had the top and the bottom so they could put them together. So, so you got the little pose there. So it was fun to play around with that. Next slide. And these are the beginning of another series that was actually this one with Take Heart that was in Jackson Young Gallery in the city, and there was a gentleman that purchased it, and he was a truck driver. So every week he would come in and he'd make a payment on it. So it took about 7 months, and but it was nice. It was a fun story to hear. But what I decided to do with this is that I work with less color, monotone color, and I sewed papers together. I made them and I sewed them together. Then I cut them up because I didn't have to worry about them falling apart. It's just going to be fused onto the panel. So, yeah. Yeah. Next slide. And then the series continued. They were done on the wood panels that were here, so I had to cut holes in there and I made little shadow boxes. And then that's where I found at Blick Art Supply, they have the little mannequins. So then I bought a whole bunch of those so I can put them in there. So yeah, a little help from our friend. And then it says, what happens to one happens to us all. So those were the titles of those. Next slide. Okay, and then this happened in Kentucky. I did a workshop and I just was showing the image transfer, so I put him in there. And then my father wore work boots all the time, and my husband, those are my husband's work boots, and I just love work boots, you know. And so then the mannequin is made out of wood, and so those are goldenrod galls, images of those that are in there. So it's nature and man. That was just the theme of it, you know. And I was playing with a lot of printing too and adding printing that was in there. So I keep kind of exploring on the surface to see what I can do. Next slide. And then I'm showing here is an image transfer. So like I said before, it is many layers, 3 or 4 layers on the image, and then it gets flipped over after it's dried and it's fused to its surface, and then you wet it and you peel the paper back off. So I went on my, off the studio, I have a little deck that's there, and after winter, I opened it up, and in the corner where the door was closing in that, there was the dead little bird. Light as a feather. The feathers were still there, the bones were there, but everything else had, you know, gone. And I'm just like, wow, when do you find something like that, you know? And so I took a picture of it, and so now I have that as a reference, and I've put that in some of my artwork that's there. I mean, it's just life, you know, this is the end of life, and, you know, with this little one. And then you can see there's another one there with the nest on it, and that is a nest. I find nests, and I can take pictures of that. And I love in the fall all the colors of the leaves, but you can't necessarily use them because they're decomposing. How can you preserve something that's decomposing? But you sure could take a picture of it. And then you can even just take a picture of it and have it printed out and use the leaf that way, you know, scan it in. So I use a computer off and on. I'm not too savvy with it, but I'm good enough to work with these. So I just wanted to show, and then an image transfer is that you can see through it. And then the red leaf, I don't know if you can see through here, but you can see the words from the page beneath that. So that's kind of cool. It gives you more than just the leaf, you know, that's there. Yes.
Transfer using the
The gloss, yes. I buy it by the gallon size, quite a few of them.
So the question was for the image transfers, you
Yeah.
use
Gloss medium,
gloss
yes.
medium.
Yeah, yeah. Next slide. Got to get going. I got a couple more here. I'll get talking away. So there's the image of the bird, and that was the cycles of life. I incorporated the house in there, and I also incorporated the circle. I have a circle thing too. You know, I find I have patterns. I have things that I like, you know. So the healing, I call them the healing circles. So, you know, things happen in my life. People are going through hard times. Our world is going through hard times, whatever it is. You know, sometimes I just don't know what to do with my emotions, you know, and so I need to process through those. So I use my art, you know, and I put it together and just put it all in there and see what comes out of there. Next slide. And so here is the circle, healing circle series. And all it is shapes, okay, and colors. This is the first one there is with the yellow in it. It's called Holding Space. And, you know, for somebody that you care a lot about and there's really not much you can do, you just kind of have to hold space for them, you know, allow them to go through what they need to do. So like I said before, this is just my way of processing life, you know, and then I bring it to art and I put it in there. So next slide. And these are my Beetlejuice flowers. I played with some deli paper and then I painted it black and then I printed on it with some stripes there. And then they started off in a class at Naperville Art League and I was just showing, you know, what to do. And I think I got a bar of soap and it was in a little cardboard box and the center was cut out and it was a little leaf shape. So then I brought that in and I cut the, the little petals shape, I mean. And so I was just showing them, look what you can do, from here you can get a stencil and you can work from there. So I did one and then I'm like, oh, I got more of this black and white paper. Let's see where this goes, And so it's different compositions, but you can see the composition. It's a horizontal. I start with that horizontal, but the last one up on the screen, it's got a long vertical in the background. But there's so many different ways that you can work with just that. It's not just a flat line. You can break it up in different ways. Next slide. Okay, and this is something I do at libraries. They ask me to come in sometimes. It's something simple that we can work with, and they're collage animals. And so I have a lot of stencils that I cut out of animals, and we can put them together, and it's really a fun thing. You pick your animal out you like. I like the little mouse a lot, and the bison. And you can see in the bottom corner here of this slide, you can buy this blue thin plastic, and you can find an image of an animal and you can cut it out and make your own stencils. They sell it at, it's a film. They sell it at Blick Art Supplies that I found. So next slide. So then that led me to this, and I like a jumping mouse. I don't know. I'm not in the house though. Just outside, just see them outside. They're just so cute, So this is a big one, the big one all by itself, the single one. I think he's a 24 by 24. And then this other one with the 4 or 5 of them in there, 5 or 6 of them that are in there. They're just smaller ones and playing with the paper and bringing in some gestural lines. And I like to bring in the gestural lines because we're not using our writing skills a lot. And so it's fun to put my energy in there. So I like to use that and put that in there. This is sewn together on the board, the paper. I've used book thread. It's a wax thread. So I've drilled holes through it in some areas and then the other areas that I sewed it together. So next slide. And so then I played with the whole silhouette theme to see, where I could go with this. And the owl, actually, it was a time my father had passed away. He was in the process of passing over. And so I needed something to work on, there. So that one, I worked on there. I love the bears too, and the coyotes and the wolves. And this is a golden eagle that's there. So just playing and put them on the wood panels and just seeing what would happen with all these different silhouettes. So the coyote and the wolf, they went to somebody in Arizona. They saw them online, and so I'm like, oh, yeah, that was a nice sale. Unexpectedly. Everybody thinks artwork, my experiences is artwork sells when you least expect it. You can't expect it. It just, the right person comes along and, and they make the purchase. So next slide. Okay, and then this has been a really fun series. I started doing the first one down at the bottom here with the house and the dog peeking out of the house. I did that as a demonstration up in Dillman's at Lac du Flambeau. That's a fun place if you ever want to go and take a lot of artists that are up there. Great place. Bring your dog. It's a great place. So I made one, and then I made another one while I was there and just working with it. I'm like, oh, this would make a good series for a calendar. And so then I needed to make 12 of those. So I set myself up probably about number 7. I was like, oh, what did I do to myself? But then after you keep on going, because I don't know what it is about that number, you see the body of work that you can make with this, and it gets the momentum going again. Next slide. Okay, and that's it. And then actually this one here with the girl there, that was an image of a pose of a model. And so then I use a clear transparency and I made a picture of her, used my computer, and then I sanded her, and then I sanded the model's face off, and then I drew hair in there like me. And so this is actually representing Lone Crow. That's me, my little identity. And somebody bought it. I'm like, really? So. All righty, I'm going to step behind and we're going to get going on the demo. Is there any questions? If you wanted to, you can go up to Barry and, or is there any questions on?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, good. All right.
Laura, there are a couple questions in the Q&A.
Yes.
You can decide whether you want to answer these now or whether you'd rather wait in the process. The first one is, how do you use your image transfers if you're not using a jelly plate?
Because I print it off on a computer paper, and then I give it 3 coats of gloss medium, and then I trim around it, and then I turn it over and fuse it to my art piece that I'm working on. So it's not, and has nothing to do with a jelly plate. Yeah.
Okay, and then there's one other question here. Do you use glue or medium to fuse your paper to the wood panel? And if it's glue, what type of glue is that?
Yeah, I use I don't have the small bottle with me. I use, I think it was on the first slide. If anybody wants to go back and watch it again, there was the supplies. It's called gloss medium, and that is what I use on the board and the artwork. And we'll get into that, and I'll show that a little bit today. Yeah.
And was that a golden product?
Yes, yeah. I don't use the Liquitex because Liquitex, the ingredients that are in there, if you touch it with water or liquid on the surface of it, it'll go back to its liquid state, much like Elmer's glue. So the gold, and it may get a little cloudy if there's water on there or anything you use, but then it doesn't go back to its liquid state. Like you could rub it and start getting sticky again. That's what happened to Liquitex. So I only use the gloss from Golden. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
so
great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to jump into here and show a few things about altering some papers. These are Cedar Canyon templates, and you can get these at Blick Art Supply. And they have textures that are on there. And I'm just going to show this here. Let me get my sandpaper. Okay, just use fine sandpaper. And I like the National Geographics because they have full photographs. So that's really nice. There's not a lot of advertisement. And then what I'm going to do is just going to take this and I'm going to sand. It's not like sanding, wood. It's just a fine sandpaper. I'm going to turn it this way and hold it in place. What kind of template is that, Laura? A Cedar Canyon template. So then here is texture that you start to lose what image is behind there because you've added that texture that's right on the surface there. And you can use a wet cloth, or I just have baby wipes I use. Okay, and then what I have to do is I have to clean that off before I add any color to it or coat the paper. So that is one sample there. Here's another sample. This was shelf liner paper with all the little things that you put in your cabinet. You line your things, so that was there. And then I had some stencils, so numbers, so I used that. This is one here where you can see I added color to that, and I left this plain. So it is a choice. There's many choices that happen throughout the process of making these papers. This one here was made from, it is a sink liner, and it had the pebble effect, okay? And so then I put that on there, and then I sanded the surface of it, and then I came back in and I added color to it, and I'll show that really quick. What's neat about this is you can cut these shapes out and you can create areas where there's rocks, standing on top there. So that's kind of neat there. So I'm going to toss this off to the side, and let's see. We'll go back to the first one. I'm going to use, this is just a yellow, Indian yellow. And what I do is I use the baby wipe because it's already moistened and wet. All right. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to rub the surface. And wherever I sand it, I open up the magazine. And then what happens is the color sinks into that sanded area. So I'm even altering the surface of these papers even more. Okay, so there's that. Okay. All right, and that's a simple thing to do with the magazine. I'm just going to show you, I won't have time because I need to get into doing the real demo here, but this is actually a map from an atlas, and then I've altered it and I put gesso on the surface of it, or if you don't have gesso, you can use white paint, but gesso's a little less expensive and I can buy it in larger quantities. And here, this one here, I just stamped the gesso with the shape of the circle. And now what I want to show you is they're dry now, so it's nice to show how you can kind of alter these. And you can make it more, the more that you rub in, and then I'm going to take the back side and just rub it a little bit more. So you get that value that's in there of that color, lights and darks that are there. So there's a sheet music in there, and it's not good to just put this on and say, okay, this is my artwork. This is also copyrighted. But if you take this and use a section of it, it breaks it up, okay? So these are just some quick, I have a lot of different ways that I make paper, and people were asking about the jelly plates, and they're great, but whenever I brought them to my classes and had everybody work with them, that's all they wanted to do. And there's more papers and different things that you could do. So I don't bring jelly plates, and I don't necessarily use them either. So let me set that there. Okay, I'm going to get us moving here and show you a collage. Yeah.
You come up with a concept or a theme before you sit down and pick out your material?
Just a moment. Here's the mic.
Whoop. Let me grab this. She's gonna, okay. Yeah.
Do you come up with a concept before you sit down and select your materials you're going to work with, like a theme?
Yes and no.
Yes.
Yes and no. Today I do have a theme. I'm going to continue this spirit horse, these little things. So I have one and I have papers all ready to go. And so I'm going to continue with that. So it was really hard because I had it laid out and it was all ready to just use that iron and fuse it to the surface. And I said, nope, got to do it here. So yeah. So these are just deli sheets. And what I'm going to do is I put this in between there. Because as you can see, probably with the camera and people that are here, it's real shiny. That's the layer of gloss that's on there, and it's also on the back side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share with you, this is the pony or the horse that I cut out, and here is the stencil. And I've used that with paint too. So I have both the inside and the outside of the stencil. And I pre-cut this out. And then I fused it together, and you'll see that coming. So the next paper that I have here, this is watercolor paper, 140 pounds. And then what I've done is I've added some white tape around the outside edge here, just so that when I cut this off, it will give me a nice clean area around there, kind of like a mat on there. So I'm going to take this here, okay, and I'm just going to kind of position this in there. All right, and I've gone a little bit over the edge. So what I did here is I'm just going to
Take that paper right there.
Yes, this is actually a map, and I painted it white with gesso, and then I took a big pencil and I drew lines all over it. And then I had to spray it with an affixative so that the pencil wouldn't bleed off of there. And then what I did is I added gloss on there. So this paper has gloss on the back side, and it has gloss here. I also put a layer of gloss on the back there, on the substrate there. Okay, these are going to fit in there. Okay. And then the next thing is that we'll see if we can get this all fitting in there. So it's kind of, I'm just going to slip this underneath here. Okay.
That's supposed to be a mountain?
Yep. Okay. Need to bring this down just a little bit. And we'll see about this size here. There. Okay, and now instead of putting the whole black piece across there, what I decided to do is add this red paper, and I've got it up here too. I've got a little bit of the yellow, and it's working on there. And these are just some small pieces there. Okay, and so here's the horse. Okay, and he's going to go up in this area here. And then this just was something that I stamped on there, and I said, well, let's make this a little bit different there. Let's put that there. Okay, and now at this point here, I did put the blue in there, but the blue is quite large here, so I'm going to break it down a little bit. You can use scissors or you can use the torn edges. When I first started working out, I would tear the edges all over the place. And then I decided to just cut that. And there's a difference between how things look if they're straight and cut and versus the torn edge that was there. And then for some reason, I had my own rule that I would not use the torn against the straight cut edge. And then finally one day I said, why am I doing that? Why am I giving myself these rules? But I do that was something that I heard too, that artists like to break rules, okay? So right now I'm just kind of lining this up. So I have 1, say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces, up to 7 pieces of paper I pick that I'm going to work with. So that's one rule. And then I kind of arrange these out and then I, go through the steps of fusing them down. Then I add some of the glazing on there and work with it. So at any point I've gotten a nice, I guess you would say a pattern of how I work. And anytime I want to break a rule, I break my own rule, And so then it's like, okay, make a collage with one piece of paper that has 2 sides. Can I do that? So I like to challenge myself a little bit in this. Okay, now I have to be aware I have this tape on there and that'll cut off. So I'm going to end up cutting off a little bit of that horse that's there. And now I'm just going to come in with this paper because it's there and here. So I'm working with that. Okay, and we got a real strong horizontal line. We got some stuff going on there. Okay, it's not, now at this point, I've got papers hanging out the edge that's there. I'm going to pull this back. If I was using wet glue, I would have to pull this all off after I arranged it and then try to get it back in the spot and glue it down. Okay, so.
Just a moment. We'll bring the mic to you.
Yeah. So at this point, this is a little iron I'm using. It's a craft iron, but you could use it, it's nice, it's small. Okay, and you had a question?
Yes, so the head of the horse, it's not really popping for me.
Yeah.
And you're okay with that, like you're doing that on purpose, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, because I want to put that black paper behind the horse.
Sure, because it's the same value.
Yes.
There's no contrast there. You're losing the shape because there's no contrast.
Right.
Or yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's okay. You'll see. All right. So now what I'm going to do is this is parchment paper and I'm going to start in the middle and I'm going to lay that down. It's got a silicone layer on it. I'm going to take the iron right now and just move it around. Now, some of the papers won't stick because it's on the taped edge that I did not use the gloss on. It's just on that tape edge that's there. I usually like to start in the middle and come out because if I start at the sides and work through, I might get some, some ripples. And that's some of the things when you use wet glue, there are some ways that you can press it down. People have found where, they can get their papers to lay nice and flat. Unless they have textures, then the textures will be there. But this is another way to do that. And so now it's like, the iron is, it can get up to like 250 degrees. So I'm really just kind of making sure that I go up and down and really get it to seal on there. Because what I'm doing is fusing it. I need it to get nice and hot. So I'm going to pull up this. I'll set that there. Okay, this is extra. So this is how I get these little scraps. And then I'll have them for later. And then I have them like in this little bag here. And so just in case I need a little color, I can work with that. Some of this here, I don't need to have all that extra. Okay. Alrighty, and it's kind of hard to see. There are, like I said, see, it's not necessarily tacking right there because it's going to get cut off. All right, so now is the time and as you notice here, I have a color wheel that's here, and I also have this red viewfinder. And the thing is like, you know, you look through the red viewfinder and you can see it takes away the color, but it helps show the contrast that's there. And that's right, there is no contrast here. You don't see that, okay? And then I'm working with the colors here. I have the real strong black and white that's in there. You know, I'm working with the blues and the yellows and the greens. So not that you can do a whole study on color. That's a lifetime working with color. But it's nice to have that as a reference, just as you're working somewhere around there. So now at this point here, I'm going to really tack that down just a little bit more. Down here.
So the gloss medium is acting as the glue.
When it's heated, yes. Mhm. Yeah. Yep.
Just to repeat, the gloss medium is acting as the glue.
It's an adherent it's without liquid because you have to heat that up and then it fuses together. Yes. Mhm. Okay. So now at this point here, I have, it's in a small tube, but it's also by Golden, and it's called glazing medium. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit here. Okay. And then where'd my black go? I'm going to use black. I'm going to put a little bit there. And at this point here, you know, I'm letting this cool because if I put this acrylic on it when it's hot, let me tell you, I did it one time and then I learned from that. I put it on and I rubbed it on and then all of a sudden I couldn't get it off and I couldn't figure out why, and I should be able to, but it was hot. And so with that heat, it didn't allow it to move anywhere. Okay. And so at this point here, I need a little bit of this and my paper towels. So just to let you know, it was a full roll today. And I had the electric knife. And my mother-in-law, my husband are like, what are you doing over there? I says, well, because it's always so high and you bump it. So I like to just have a shorter amount of paper towels here. So yeah, it works out good. So I got my stuff together here. I got a little bit of paper towels and I have a little baby wipe that's there. So now this is, I'm just going to make sure it's cooled. Okay, so this is really hard to watch. Because I have the glazing medium in there, it allows a play time to put it on and take it off. So now I'm going to be unifying these pieces together. It does give it a little bit of a grunge look. And so now I wipe off as much as I can with the paper towel. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and wipe off more in some of the areas. And I can play with a little bit lighter in some of these. What's around there? It unifies the papers, makes them look like they've been together for a long time. Let's see, more off there. Like I said, some of this is going to be cut around there. Cut off. Okay. And so now I have this here, and I'm going to come in with, maybe I'll do a little bit. Where'd my black go? Oh, over here. You spend more time looking for things than working with it. Okay. I don't want as much of the glazing medium in there. So I just have a little bit of the acrylic and a little bit of that mixture I had before. I get a small little paintbrush that's here. And so now what I can do is I can go in here and add some extra shadow around the horse's head. Just to give it a little bit more depth in there. I don't like to go longer than like an inch because it could start to dry. And a shadow in this aspect is not necessarily the sun. It's the paper on top of the paper and adding some depth that's in there. In some areas, I would do it more, you know, maybe in the area here. This to go. So I actually create areas, you know, by layering up the papers for this so that there's some of the shadowing that goes on. And like the circle, yeah, it stands out a little bit more. And not necessarily here because that's black, but maybe on this side of the red a little bit. Get that to shadow a little bit more. And we've got an area here. Might get cut off though. That's there. I turn it so that it's comfortable. I'm right-handed, and I want to get to the paper on the bottom of this. Some of these edges were torn and they were white, and then when I did the glazing, they actually turned out a little darker there. So that's kind of nice how that all worked out. So with the piece that we have on display there, the large horse that's there, that paper was made and then the white was cut up. And then I sewed some of the edges and sewed it together. Then I used a dark blue glazing in that. So you don't have to use necessarily a black glazing. Sometimes if it's an effect, maybe you want a soft, gentle pastel colors, you might use white, you know, in there as the outside edge of that. Okay. So I'm going to stop right here. Let me put this in here. And so there's other things that you can do at this time.
Laura, there is a question from us for the
Sure.
audience. Someone's asking, so what you were doing there with the black paint and gel medium, was that to make the horse more three-dimensional? Was that the?
Right. And then also what was brought up is that it was the same value before. And then shadowing around the head, it got that to pop out. Okay, so we didn't lose that. So I knew that was going to happen. But it's a good thing to see that, you know, it's, you know, you see the same value and you put these papers, you know, next to each other. And if you want a shape to stand out, you got to do something, either add a different value in there to get it to go out. Yeah. So these are reinforcement holes. All right. And there. And let's see what color would show up there. I do have some of this in there. So this is where, you know, I mean, just kind of playing with the colors that are I'm working with. Reintroducing them again. So this is the principle, bringing that color back in different ways. This is a cosmetic sponge that I'm using. Okay, and then now I have these circles that are here, and I'm just going to stamp in there. Play with that line, that vertical line that's there, and then I'm going to come and soften it a little bit, maybe not so much, into that edge. And now I'm just going to kind of lift that up. Okay, brought that in there. This right here, you know, I've got this blue that's going on there, and just it's I'll have to do something, maybe draw in there. It's bothering me. I have to see what we can do with that one there. Yeah, yeah. And not always, and that's the thing, when you're working with these and this is, happening, it's, sometimes it doesn't come. So it's like, okay, it's time to take a rest, and then see what happens from there. So actually, what time do we have here? Oh, we got a little bit more time. So, yeah, I'm just kind of taking a look at it. This could be just grabbing some supplies over here. Oh, we got, there's, whoops, that went. There's different stamps that you can use, different things. These are for probably in cake decorating. You can work with those and bring that in there. We have this here, this ring. And I do have this. Let's get another sponge here and take that. And I'm just going to kind of go around the edge here real quick. Okay with that, and just line it up. Okay, so at that point, I'm not the happiest with it. So if you make a choice, you can pull that off pretty quick. Okay. Let's try the little one. I'm going to dip that in there. I'm going to put that in right on there. Yeah, that made that red, even though the red is there, and using that color of blue made that kind of stand out from there. That's good. And even when I'm working with the students and stuff like that, you may not like this, but what is most important, do I like this? And when I'm working with this, then I learn, by doing it again and again and again, but I have to like it. And so I'm constantly making that choice and asking, do I like this? Oh yeah, good, stay good, keep it there. If you don't like it, then wipe it off, so it's, like I said, there's no reference. It's just playing with design and how to use that.
So someone's asking the criteria or how you're making those choices. What are you looking for as you look at the piece to make those decisions?
Right, that's a good question, really good question. I brought this blue back in over here, and this is a different color blue that's over here. This is this blue violet that's there. This was I'll have to see what I can do around here, but this was kind of getting, the red was there with the dark, but it was getting lost. It needed to, and if I shadowed around it, that would have been darker. So I needed to bring that up and get it to pop, at this point, and I'm just going to play with this here. And I'm just going to see what I can. This is taking a risk. Okay. Because sometimes where there's an area that, maybe it's sticking out, but maybe do something a little bit different in there. I'm going to take it up here. Well, we got a lot there. Let's bring this in here and just drag a little bit there. I can take the end of the paintbrush, scribe into it a little bit. Quick decision. And I wasn't quick enough. It still got on there, but that's okay. That's okay. I like to use, like I say, the pencils. These they're called Stabilos. And so this is where, it's kind of, it's just playing with a line that's in there, maybe following that in some of these areas. It's just something that I like to do.
What color is that?
It's just black. They come in different colors. But now what now at this point, I can play and make some different, that's an idea. Okay, we've got stripes that are going here, but it would be neat to introduce that again. And before I do that, let me use a paper towel. So I call this kind of blocking off. If I don't necessarily want it to go in a lot of places, then what I'll do is I'll set a piece of paper in that area to kind of protect it a little bit. And now I'm going to take this. I'm just curious, and that's where it's like, okay, what if I do this? Because the horse has a mane. What if I put this on here and play with it in here? Very faintly, but that's nice. It's a lighter value. You probably not, I'm not sure if you can see that or not at that point.
Laura, if from time to time you could lean back just a little
Sorry,
bit so
yeah.
we can see what you're doing. Thank
You
you.
get intense in it there. Thanks for reminding me. I do that at home on my own camera. Okay, I'm just going to let this sit for a second here. At this point, what I'm going to do is I won't be able to do it in here, is I put some of that pencil line that's there, and I would get a workable fixative, and that would go onto the surface. It would spray over the lines that I made so that then I'm ready to put another layer of gloss to seal everything in. And then if I want to add more, I can still go up from there. Or what I can do is then add a coat of varnish on there, and then the piece is done. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bypass that just because I don't want you guys to get asphyxiated here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the paper off the edge. Okay, so in order to do that, yes.
When you apply the gloss, does it have to be fully dry before you start to apply the next pieces on top?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty well, that sealant would be, because any place that I cut or tore the paper, if liquid gets in there, even if it's another layer of gloss or a medium, it would split the papers. So what I have to do is then, normally if I was going to be at home, I would give this a sealant, kind of like a preserve it, like waterproof it, and I would give it a coat of gloss. But I would never come in with a tack iron and use that because it's wet and it would just kind of start frying under the iron, and that's not a good texture. So this is actually, I'm not using, as you can see, all the papers were coated before I came in, top and bottom, so the collage comes together. So it's like some of these pieces, it depends on how much time, but it's just like, they came together in about 10 minutes, but it took me days to make the paper to go in there, so, which is really nice. I don't have to pull this off and then, try to glue that back on there, get it to lay flat. When I fuse it, it lays flat on there. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the back here, and I have little tabs of tape. This is something that, okay, maps are hard to find because we have GPS. The irons are hard to find, the ones with the handle on them. Those were really nice. So I had to use a different iron. This white tape is great because it doesn't deter my choices with the color. It's just white. They don't make that anymore. So as I'm going through the 30 years of doing this, 30 some years, things are not as, I'm starting to lose some of the great things that I work with in the piece. So, I better use this. This is not my table. Okay. Now, this is a 140-pound watercolor paper. So what I'm going to do is the tabs help me line up. And this is something I learned from Jonathan Tubbett. He had these, worked with this white tape like this. And it's kind of, what happens is before I cut this off, some of my students and I were like, oh, I like the way that stuck out there. So then that started a whole new direction of doing floating collages where you let that sit in the middle and let that outside edge be part of it too. So, you can't say no when somebody's got a great idea. It's like, yeah, let's see what happens with it, So I'm going to take this. And sometimes I do cut all the way through. So this was a 12 by 12 piece here. I'll come back in and tack it down a little bit. And now it's going to be an 8 by 8 piece. So the bottom edge, that's nice. And having the grunge area that's around there, that, I mean, I do have, I won't get them, but I do have these L-shaped mat frames, so you could lay it on and you could see what it looks like. I know it's going to look really a lot better with that white edge all clean instead of seeing the grunge that's around here from using the glazing. So when I'm cutting this, I'm like, okay, there's 2 pieces of paper there on top of each other. I apply a little bit more pressure with the knife. And then I gently, so see now this didn't glue down, tack down, so I'll tack it down again. Just because I'm in a hurry here and wanting to make sure we can see what I'm doing. Okay. There. Now there's a lot of going across here, so. A lot more pressure.
With those pieces that you are just cutting off now, would you be saving those then for another time?
You
add-
can, sometimes I can reuse them in the piece because it's tacky enough. And then I just kind of give it a coat of gloss afterwards because it's pretty well all been, stained by, the glazing medium that's there. But there are some cool edges, but they will, come off. You got to fuse that back on. Yeah. So I use them in art journaling too, just kind of put them in my book and that. One year I did make a lot of verticals and I had an exhibit at the Edwards Hospital in Naperville. That was some years ago. And I did these abstract landscapes. So they're really 36 inches tall by, I think, by 12. So I had these long strips that were there. I saved them and then I don't know, I couldn't find anything to use for them. But they are cool when you tear them off because they've all been, part of this. My head in the way, I'm leaning over. You get to see the gray hairs, right? I've been too far in. Okay, and see they're just kind of coming off there. So now before we take this, I am going to give it one more. Usually the outside edges where the tape is, this kind of happens. And then now it just reassures it.
Well, I'm confused about what happened with that tape just now.
So there's a question about how you were using the tape. Did it frame the size of the piece that you wanted before you started?
Yes, it gives it, for this size tape was 2 inches. So it was a 12 by 12 and 2 inches. So this ends up being an 8 by 8 that's there. I put that tape around there. It's hard to find this white tape anymore. So you have to find a painter's tape that is low tack. And sometimes I touch it to my smock, and put it on there because I'm just sealing the outside edge because as you see, I kind of muck it up, and it's nice. Like right now, I mean, I'm not sure if I want to put a mat on this or do I want to continue cutting out that square and put it and mount it on a little wood panel. I can do that. So this gives me a choice. It's inexpensive. It's just a piece of watercolor paper, and then I can make the choice afterwards with that. There is over there on the table, I don't know if we have a little time, but at one point I used, what is it, tar paper as a surface, a substrate. And then I put grommets in there because I'm thinking, well, if people don't have the money to buy a piece of artwork, with a mat and a frame and, you know, on there in glass, it gets pretty expensive. And some of our younger people, you know, might want to buy some art. So I put the grommets so you could just hang it that way, you know, just with the grommets without it, you know. So that was interesting to learn how to use the tar paper with the heat and work with it, because that tar paper, you know, with the heat, yeah. So it worked for a while. I have a big roll. I haven't done anything with it, but you know, I've done a big roll with it. So, so yeah, this piece is done. Can you see it on the screen? Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. This is the one with the tar paper, and see, it's nice and sturdy. Yep. And the collage, it went right on the surface of it. Yep. And there's the back. I did give it a coat of gloss on the back there because this side was kind of funky on there. So, yeah. I've done a couple of those. Like I say, I got into using the tar paper and see what I could do with it. So yeah, thanks. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just wanted to share with you before, let's see what time it is. We got a couple of minutes. I'll just put this off to the side here for now. This is my, I make these books, the Coptic Stitch books, because they're nice. They kind of open all the way up. This started in 2014, and this is my sketchbook. And I work with just magazines and a glue stick. And I just wanted to share, this was an ad out of the newspaper. So what could you make from that, you know, as a design sense? And so here I practice in using different papers and broke that up. This was another, the advertisement, playing with that, you know, just the shapes and the space. Okay. And then this was a walk out in the woods in an abstract landscape. And so these are some of the colors that I saw. Very early spring. There's no green left, and there's just leftover that was there. So I did this one. Then I had the papers, let's do it again, working with the colors that are there. And then I worked with it again. And then again, you know, so working with the colors and working with the theme, doing it again and again, it just, you know, it's like, I don't want to do the same thing. So I kind of force myself to do something a little bit different. Some of the sandings, just playing with different, and then, well, this is where this went. It went to here, and then I brought in those healing circles that are there. And I did make a piece larger like that. And this is an example here, out of here, one of these pictures. This is one of the, and I blew it up. This is one of the pages out of here. And so I did this magazine image. And then what I did is I did it again just to study the composition where things are laid. It's a little hard to see. I don't know if can you see it better there? There might be a glare with the plastic that's there. And so I did it again here just with the magazines. And then I took it to this step, and this is a wood panel. And then I did it to here. So I really started to understand where everything was placed in here in that composition. So I worked it again and just kind of did a study with it, with there. And sometimes when I make my tissue papers, they tear and there's a hole. So I said, never do anything. You never know when you're going to be able to use that. And so here it worked out really nice, and it showed the sheet music there. So I changed it up each time I did it just a little bit, you know, but that's a way to study your composition, study your the design. And here's another pony that's there, and I used book thread that was there, and I stayed with the light blues and the yellows and a little bit of the peaches. So I'm just kind of playing with those. It's simple and it's pleasing. Everybody may not like it. And then I'm just at that point now that I'm just going to make the work that I like to make, you know, and, you know, and along the way, something happens and some people buy it, you know, so I'll just set that there. But anyways, this is the sketchbook, and see, there's the circles again. I do have some classes that are online for people, and it's basic design, and it's in a sketchbook like this, and it's very minimal and simple, but you need to break up those design elements to understand them a little bit as you work in your pieces. I like to work with, like you say, the vertical too, so then I was playing with that. This one actually turned into a piece of artwork. I used different colors that were there. This one turned into a piece of artwork. So this is my sketchbook. You know, a lot of people would use the pencil or watercolor or whatever it is. I just use the magazines. Here is a study here working with the grays, the grayscale. You know, it's always good to work with that grayscale so you can see the contrast that's there, and then make a piece, you know, that's like, you know, always put light next to dark and dark next to light if you want something to stand out, you know. Then I take some notes that are here. There's the house theme that came in again, playing with the colors, marbles. I don't know what that, yeah. Then this is the house theme here. And here you go. Do you remember seeing that house under the big moon? Here's that, how that is. And then it evolved and it changed a little bit. These were, it's an exercise that I do. And it's like, you know, you make a design in the back, but put one image in, you know, one image. And then this one came and became something else. And then I used some of the paper. And so this is interactive in there. So that's kind of cool. It was fun to see where that goes. And then this was playing with putting shapes on there and then adding that line in there. So I was trying to make with something a little different, energy-wise. Nest.
Laura?
Yes.
How often do you work in your sketchbook, and what types of things inspire you? For instance, I was wondering if like the recent mission with the astronauts who actually circled the moon, maybe that was something that might inspire you, or what inspires you?
Right. The house themes do. Yeah, it's just, you know, usually what I do when I come to the sketchbook, and I haven't come here in a long time. My life is very, very busy right now. Grandkids, and I got, you know, I'm the one in between, elder and grandkids, you know, and there's a lot of care that has to be, you know, going on, and then still keeping up my art practice, you know, and still doing as much as I can. So I'm not in this sketchbook as much now. But I go right to the artwork. I go right to the idea and work on the board. But I usually like to take about 10 magazine pages. I go through the magazine and just tear out the whole page, 10 of them. And then this is my exercise. I give myself an assignment. I got 30 minutes, and can I make 5 collages in my sketchbook? Just with those 10 pieces of paper. And sometimes it's just design. It's just, okay, this piece is good here. Oh, I like this here, and it's lines and shapes and stuff like that. Sometimes there's imagery that I find, and then I can add that in there. Once you add that image in there, then it can really start to tell a story, you know, and you can, you know, can ad lib, and it takes off from there, or putting some words or numbers and stuff like that in there. So, some of these I take a viewfinder, and then what I do is I take the viewfinder and I set it down and I pick out a composition, and then I draw it in a way that where I see shapes in that, and it changes, and then by the time it comes here, it changes again. But it's just the study of design. You know, what do I see? You know, what can I make from this? Just a simple view. Yes.
So are you using the gloss medium?
No, never in the sketchbooks. I just use a glue stick in magazines and a scissor. Yeah.
So you
this
aren't
is-
using the gloss medium?
No, not in here. This is just a glue stick that I use in here. And this is my practice. This is my collage sketchbook, you know, that I work in. Because I do draw. I have drawn. You know, I've done printmaking and jewelry making and ceramics and all that stuff like that. But when I'm working with my collage, I need to use paper, you know, cut and work with that. So it's just a magazine and a glue stick that's in here. So I'm just sharing some, you know, and here's another, you know, reference, and taking a view, you know, just go around your magazines, get a viewfinder, you know, like this is a red frame, but you could just cut yourself out one, and you just go around, and you're like, oh, that looks cool. And then cut that piece out. And just so that you see, you're looking, you're observing. That is one of the things that we forget to do. Oh, we know a horse has got 4 legs. He's got mane and a tail. And then we start drawing it and we go, oh, this doesn't look like a good horse. You know, I mean, because we're not looking, we're just going from our own idea of what it is, you know, unless you want to give a more primitive or kind of a little distorted or, you know, kind of illustrative, you know, kind of a horse. But we have to keep looking again. So this is another way to do it, is to look and see what I see. And I'm not doing it perfect. That's not what I want. What do I see here? What I could put some things in here. And then I have an area here that I blocked off, and then I can work on there. So let's see if I got simple things here. The trees that were picture of trees, those lines. Then I took the paper and I folded it in half and took the sandpaper and I sanded that edge. And then I've had the white lines. So that is what I saw. You know, that is what I played with. And just giving yourself, like I say, just a couple minutes and see what you can do. So working in this, I would love to keep working with these and have a lot of sketchbooks, you know, filled up with that. But, you know, I got to work with my time and my life right now. And I'm just happy that I'm able to keep doing it, you know. So I have come to my pumpkin hour. It is 8 o'clock. So I think I did pretty good. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. Any other questions? And while you're thinking, just to let everyone know, we did have the privilege of recording tonight's program. So you will receive a follow-up email from me tonight with links to the DuPage Art League, as well as lots of great links to Laura's work as well.
Yeah.
And then once the IT department does just a little bit of editing, we will send out a second follow-up email with the direct link to the recording.
Yeah.
So again, you've had a moment
Yeah.
here. Any other questions?
Mhm.
Let me
Yeah.
check in the back one more time to see if we have any virtual questions.
Mhm.
Oh, here's a good one. I'm guessing that you have a lot of supplies, a lot of materials.
Product.
So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
question is, how do you store them and organize them?
I just got done doing that as of right after Christmas, January, February. I wanted to get done by the end of February, and then I got a nice gift from a loved one, and that was a little extra cash after Christmas. So my husband stepped in and put a lot of shelves on this big wall. I took over our master bedroom a long time ago for my studio space. Our children moved out, so we have many rooms. So we took one of the bigger rooms, you know, instead of our master bedroom that we built this addition on. So I have a real tall ceiling, and so I feel I got one of those, it's not a ladder, like a library ladder, but I have my own ladder so I can get there. So I went through everything, and I purged a whole bunch of stuff and put it in another empty room. And what I did is I called up a few friends, and actually a new teacher that I met at a local school, and told her to come and take whatever she wanted. And so I got to meet the principal, and it's just, you know, there's extra, you know, and I pick extra things out, and things are given to me. So, but to organize it, I do try to put a label on it and try to remember where I put things, you know, but it looks really nice now. I mean, I feel good about it. I do have a clean space, but as you can see, it gets messy pretty fast. And when you're in your moment of creating, it's just like, oh, throw this down, grab that, you know, and work with it. So,
And so do you have separate studio space, or do you work there in the?
I work in that master bedroom as my studio. Yeah. And then I have another bedroom that I store all my artwork in. So I need to, I really probably, have a open studio, you know, sale someday here soon. So, that would be nice. Yeah.
Sounds good.
It is hard to store this. You know, people always want to say, well, you know, I mean, how do I organize, you know, how do I organize all my papers? You know, put all the reds in one and all the blues in the other. I'm like, oh no, because it's just too hard to, oh, I need a red or whatever. I usually put them in a, because my papers, if I'm working bigger, then I store them in a different way, but I get a box like this, and then I put them in a box like this between the deli sheets because they're coated already. So then I go and I just pick out papers, and then I lay them down and I see what they look like, and then I work with those papers at that time. But the bigger sheets, I have to kind of put wax paper where you can get long pieces and put them in between there and work with that. So I did want to share with you, this is just one last thing. This is, the students like this. I love it because every time I work with it, it comes out different. And so this is your grocery bag, and then it can be this. So it's really, and then this is made to be cut and brought into the artwork. So it's fun when we start a class off, you know, if anything, it's just put a couple layers of gesso on there, let that dry, add some color, let it dry. It's going to look ugly. It's going to not look like anything. It's not supposed to look like artwork. Then add some more layers on there, bring some stamping in there. And then all of a sudden you've got 7 or 8 layers of different things that you're doing, and that paper starts to look good. I mean, everybody that works through it, you know, it's just fun because you're coming to this, you don't know what's right or wrong. Well, it's good to play on the surface of the papers before you bring it to the artwork. Then you've experimented and you have that experience. So if you want to do some stamping or spreading or whatever, you see me just, you know, spreading the paint, then you can do it that way too. So I forgot to show you that. So,
Yeah.
all right. Ooh, yeah.
Magazine, a page of the magazine, you automatically code it before, or do you wait until you're ready to use it?
No, I like to coat the papers. If I'm going to use it, get them pre-coated because then they're all done. And then what you know, having the paper coated, then I just pull the paper out. And as you can see how fast I made the collage, then I have it ready. But I just have to store them between the deli sheets because they all have gloss on the top and bottom. And if I let them sit there long enough, they'll make a collage without me. And that's not fun. That's not fun. Yeah, yeah. So.
And perhaps we'll have this as the last question tonight. Someone's asking, are you still teaching workshops?
Yeah, you know, I just had a workshop that I had to cancel because we didn't have enough enrollment. I do have one at Shake Rag Alley coming up in October. I'm taking off kind of for the summer because we're just, a lot of family members are moving out of state. So I have to just kind of watch what I'm, you know, how much I'm getting involved in. But I usually do workshops that are around here. I think next year at DuPage, I'll be doing a workshop in April. I think it's a 2-day or probably a 2-day workshop. So you make paper one day and then the next day you put it together in your collage. Yeah. So
Sounds
yeah.
great. Thank you so
yeah.
much.
And I do have online classes. So if anybody's interested, there's online classes where you can do it at your own time, you know, which the information will go out to you. Yeah. So, all right. I better zip it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Sounds good.
Thanks a lot,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.